The body of Jeremy Bowles was found this morning on a patch of wasteland in the East End at about 6:30 a.m.
Can you first talk a little bit about what you're showing off here at E3 from Heavy Rain?
Well, this year we present the first two real scenes from the actual game after having presented technical demos and scenes that are not in the game. Well, this year we show real scenes from the game, and we introduced the two first of the four main characters. First one is Norman Jadon. He's a profiler from the FBI, and we introduced him in a scene called Mad Jack, where he goes in a junkyard to investigate on the case of the origami killer. And the second character we presented exclusively today was Madison Page. She's a photographer suffering of insomnia, and she goes to a nightclub where she needs to talk to a guy called Paco, who is the owner, and things won't turn exactly the way she expected. The main storyline, it's the story of four characters whose destinies are interlaced around the investigation about the origami killer. He's a serial killer, and his name comes from the fact that in his MO he leaves an origami in the hand of his victims. But not all four characters will be professional investigators. Some of them, they all will be involved for very, very different reasons. The game takes place through 4 days, and the lives of these four characters will entirely change based on this investigation.
How much player choice will there be in terms of story, and how much can you change? Because Fahrenheit started out as very sort of, you could change a lot of things, and then it became a little bit more linear. How will the Heavy Rain play out?
It's always a balance to find between the fact that you need to tell a story that is a good story, and at the same time the bandwidth that you give to the player. It's not a secret, and I don't want to lie about that. I'm very clear about the fact that Heavy Rain is not a procedural story that you can entirely change. It's really the idea of the banding stories that I've developed, the idea that the story is a rubber band, that the player can stretch or deform based on his action, but the backbone of the story, the rubber band, is always there. But the shape of the rubber band is defined by the player's actions. So there will be a lot of possibilities to affect the way the story is told, probably more than in Fahrenheit, but there will be some limits to that. All the challenge is to try to make these limits invisible to the player. But it's not magic. I mean, it's not procedural. There are some rules, and we need to tell a story, and the story needs to be as good as possible. But to try to create much more an emotional journey, something that will unfold as the player moves along, rather than to have a set of difficulties or skills that will be required or whatever. So it's a very different type of experience, I guess. Heavy Rain is a mature game. It's not for kids, it's not for teenagers, it's for adults. So the rating will be according to that. We use violence, we use sex, we use humor, we use everything we can just to tell the story we need to tell. Nothing is gratuitous. You will never see a gore situation just for the sake of being gore, or a sexy situation just for the sake of being sexy. We just use any tool that we have to tell the story we need to tell and to make these characters look real. And you know, in real life, no one is entirely black, no one is entirely white. We are all kind of gray, and we do sometimes we do great things, sometimes we do bad things, and this is why we are human beings. And I wanted to get away from many video games that are a little bit, you know, like this, or you're good or you're bad. And these characters, they have strength, they have weaknesses, and I hope that this is the combination of these two things that will create empathy with the player, make them look real, and will make that the player will really feel involved, emotionally involved in what happens to them. I want to ask the player these very difficult questions that maybe in our real life we don't ask ourselves, like how far are you prepared to go to save someone you love, for example, which is the tagline of the game. This is something we probably, we all said to someone we loved, I would do anything for you. To our kids, to our wives, to our parents, to whatever. And in fact, the game asks you this very difficult question, what does it exactly mean? I would do anything for you. What does anything really mean? And would you really do anything for someone you love? The game allows you to ask yourself this question without having to be confronted with the real consequences.
The interface was very interesting as well. It's very different. A lot of developers are moving away from a visual interface, trying to hide everything, but in your game it sort of pops up and you can see. Why did you choose to go that way?
We made many tests about the interface, and you know, developers don't try to make it invisible. In fact, what they do is they try to put it as icons in 2D, so to separate the world, the 3D world, with the interface. Which generates some kind of disconnection. It's like if there was an invisible glass in front of the 3D world where you could display these things. We try to get away from that, and we try to integrate everything in 3D because we thought that it'd be less of a disconnection. And at the same time, you can see what you want to interact with and how to interact with. And we discovered that after a while, people don't see the interface anymore. Here you see it because it's really a presentation and you're out of the experience, but when you play it, you see it the first 10 minutes and then you forget about it, and it becomes a very fluid thing to do. Also, it's easy to get rid of the interface when you just need to press a button for action, but here we have this very specific interface where we try to create immersion by unfolding the move of the character. When he moves his arm, the arm moves in a direction, and you really unfold this movement. So it's something different, and we needed this interface, and we just wanted to go in the direction of integrating in 3D. The way it was done, pretty much, I think the idea came from Fight Club and the IKEA scene where he goes in his apartment and all these, you know, labels are here on his furnitures. This was really the initial idea.
This E3 has been a few reveals, a few interesting projects that Sony have showed what their future is about motion sensing. Have you seen anything that you get interested in here?
Well, of course, being an exclusive developer for Sony, we are very interested in the devices developed by Sony regarding motion control, for example, and we work on this currently. So we seriously think about it. I think it's great that there are so many new ideas around. I think that the Wii and Nintendo's way of seeing the industry had a great impact on everybody. I just hope that we are not going to be only an industry of toys. I would still hope that the game industry still considers developing the more creative side. There's a fantastic game on DLC on PlayStation Store called Flowers. I would love to see more games like that, exploring new ways and new directions and new ideas. There's another fantastic designer called Ueda in Japan developing Ico Shadow of the Colossus, working on a fantastic new project. I mean, okay, there are some very creative people. I hope we won't ask these people tomorrow to work on Wii Fit and do different things where you need to move on your couch. I hope all options will remain on the table, and we'll still try to see video games as a creative industry.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your questions.
Get back to your busy schedule.
Thanks.